Hello, and welcome to a new episode of The Career Changers. Today, our guests are Adam Zek and Josh Sklut, co founders of MyStandard, a revolutionary job search platform using blockchain technology designed to give users ownership and control of their data. In a whirlwind fundraising success, MyStandard raised $510,000 in just 30 hours. Today, we will discuss Adam and Josh's career journey, their startup adventure, and the future of hiring. Welcome, Adam and Josh. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very
you for
much.
having us. Thank you.
So let's start with your background. Can you tell us what led you to create MyStandard?
I was in talent acquisition, like sales consulting for 14 years, I'd say, and just really dove into that industry, started understanding the pain points of why organizations were losing talent or having trouble hiring talent or having trouble securing budget in order to execute on initiatives, and just enjoying that. I think everything was going pretty well, actually. And then hit me like a lightning bolt one day that there was not an easy way for organizations to have a way of vetting candidates without seeing too much about them. And so this idea of having proofs about a candidate's capabilities and fit for a job without actually seeing all the details that could induce bias was something that I was trying to solve for. And we decided to pursue this company to do it. And also realizing that companies are sitting on a lot of data on people and not really getting any value on it. They're just spending money to protect that data and sometimes not even doing that well. And they're not really getting anything for all that spend. So we wanted a way for companies to get some value out of all the data they're sitting on people. And that's the two principles that started the initial premise of the company. And we've been off to the races since for over 4 years.
My background is predominantly talent acquisition on the recruiting side. So both as a recruiter and then as head of talent acquisition, building talent acquisition structures and teams from the ground up. Ab and I connected, as he mentioned, about 4 years ago, and we both had a vision. Mine was more on the candidate side. How do we get the best user experience possible for candidates? Because the current tools that are out there, like LinkedIn and Career Builder and all the other things, are really not very useful any longer. So we tried to create a system that was more equitable and also that gave users control of their data and the ability to monetize that data, which obviously during this call we'll get into, but that's the genesis. And we've been building, as Adam mentioned, for about 4 years.
So if we take a step back and we go back to when you were very young, what was instead your dream job?
Oh, that's funny. Okay, so I ended up being about 5'8", but my dad's 6'5", and I was a really good basketball player, but I was just stopped growing. I ended up being more on my mom's height side than my dad's height. So my dream job, and I trained for it every day. I worked on it, and I was pretty good at it. It was just basketball. I thought I'd be a professional basketball player like any kid out there who's shooting hoops. And that's one of those sports where, unless you're just an athletic freak of nature, you have to be in the 6'5" plus realm to have a chance. And that's not where I ended up. That was my dream job, and I definitely pivoted to being a golfer as soon as I stopped growing vertically. And that's been fun, but I never wanted to be a professional golfer, but I have enjoyed it for all these years.
What about you, Josh?
My dream job, maybe acting.
You'd
When
be
I was a
good.
kid, thank you. When I was a kid, I did a bunch of television commercials when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old, because I was like the kid, the kind of, I had big glasses. So I was that kind of goofy glasses kid. So I went down that road for a minute and then just didn't happen because of life. I pivoted to building MyStandard.
Oh, phenomenal. And what was your first job? The first job ever?
Ice cream, Dairy Queen.
Certainly, I
Yeah,
see.
ice cream shop at Dairy Queen. Yeah, that was great.
Wow.
I miss those days, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
My first job was usher in a movie theater in Manhattan.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back to building my standard. So you've been working on this project over the last 4 years. What were some of the key milestones in your journey?
Some of the ones that stand out would be just like some of the early things that happened that kind of launched this when we first got our first investment 4 years ago. I know you mentioned a more recent raise that we had, but we were able to raise about $1.3 million in 2021. And that came quickly. People got very excited about what we were doing very fast. And it made it very real for Josh and I that, like, I guess we're going to do this full time. We weren't really sure if it was just a special idea because we thought of it and it was our idea, or once the market started seeing that it was special to them and people wanted to invest in it, it validated all the things that we've been talking about. And then our first hire, Andy, it's Josh, me, and Andy and I for a while. And the three of us just really started putting the brick by brick pieces together to make it what it is today. But those first checks coming in was just shocking to me. And I was like, wow, this is real and this is going to happen. And when I quit my job to do this full time, that was a big milestone for me that I'll probably never forget. That was a really exciting and enjoyable time.
I guess that was very exciting when you saw the first check, yes.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So what were the key factors that you think contributed to this rapid success?
And at this point, I don't know if I would call it rapid because we've been doing this for a while. But what I think, to Adam's point, is that the market is hungry for change. I think that the current structures of talent acquisition as they sit are not effective. I call LinkedIn Tinder for resumes, Tinder for professional life, because you're basically sitting on there swiping, disqualifying folks based on their picture or their name or where they went to school or their current company, none of which have any real value in the ability for them to do whatever job it is you're looking for. I think the market I'd say probably the last 12 to 18 months is really starting to get tired of the current system, tired of LinkedIn, tired of the other job boards, and giving all of that information away for free. So I think that's the catalyst for us to keep pushing forward, is especially with all the AI tools that are coming out and just the market shifting away from traditional recruiting. There's a real window of opportunity for what we're doing.
So let's talk about Web3 and beyond. Consider I know nothing about it. So your goal is to inspire other businesses to use Web3 for non-crypto based platforms. Can you explain why you believe Web3 has such potential beyond cryptocurrency?
Yeah, right now people think of cryptocurrency and they think of things that you can just trade and make money on. And while that's the prominent use case for crypto right now, the infrastructure that's being built is a little bit more nuanced. Like, it provides some abilities and capabilities that we just don't have today in the current infrastructure of how things are set up. So the general principle of Web3, if you ever think what is Web3, if I had to define it, it's the idea of ownership, like digital ownership. Today, you might think you own your money, but you've given it to a bank. And that bank is actually the custodian of your cash. So there's times where you might not be able to access your funds. We've seen it hundreds of times in history where banks don't let people have their cash, or they're having a system error, or they have some provision they have in their, the other day I was trying to use my credit card, wasn't working. I had to call because I was traveling and get it approved for travel use. And even then, I had trouble with transactions while I was on my trip and I had to keep calling. They have your money. They get to decide when you can use it and when you can't use it. So that's what Web3 is supposed to solve, is this idea that somebody else owns this digital thing about you. And the reason Bitcoin is popular is because of that very idea. Like, you could send Bitcoin to somebody else, no one could stop you. There's places you could buy things Bitcoin, no one could stop you. You can cash out Bitcoin through an exchange. Exchanges could be risky, but overall, no one can stop you. Like, it's all you as control of your funds. And so for us, we're doing the same thing, but for your personal data. So in today's world, you're giving your personal data to somebody else and hoping that they're a good custodian of it. And Web3 finally allows us to have an opportunity to build businesses where we don't have to rely on somebody else. So we're hoping that this model that we've created, where personal data is owned by the individual and profited and shared by the individual, will inspire other ideas where there's things about us in this world that are digitally owned by somebody else, but technically we think we have ownership of. And we're hoping that more of those use cases will come out. And the way we've architected the company makes it so that while there's a token that's involved here, the token actually allows for some very nuanced utility in this product that you cannot make in a Web 2 type of infrastructure. The incentive structure that we could put in place using a Web3 architecture is completely different than how you see like a LinkedIn work. And so we make sure that everybody profits on our platform. Everybody wins, as opposed to just LinkedIn winning. And so this idea that everybody can win is a Web3 principle. You can only do it with the infrastructure we've created here today. And I think that we're hoping that more businesses are inspired by this and start to think, how can I make a system where everybody wins on my platform, as opposed to just like one party or two parties? Everybody can win. And that's really embodies the idea of like why tokens, why Web3 is really going to become, I think, progressively more used and disrupt more and more businesses.
So if I understand well, you're supporting companies, but also empowering job seekers. How does MyStandard enable job seekers to be more successful and own their data?
Basically, with the way the structure is set up, in the US, you can download the apps. They're in both app stores, iPhone and Android. They put their professional data into the app, stays behind it, it's encrypted, it's behind a wall, no one can see it or touch it or be able to use it. And a company like, let's say, IBM, who's on our board of directors, they need a software engineer in New York who makes $150,000 a year. You happen to be one of those people. You'll get a notification on your phone that says IBM would like to talk to you about this opportunity. You'll be able to see the job description. And then you have a decision to make. Would you like to share your data with IBM, or would you not? If it's IBM's been an interesting potential company for you to take a look at, you'd say yes, and you'd swipe, and your data would get sent to IBM, and then IBM pays you for access to that data. So instead of paying the third party like LinkedIn, where there's nothing at stake, right? Because it's a subscription model. Now both sides have a vested interest in the success of this connection. So the candidate, the user, gets paid for something they've been giving away for free for 20 years. They get to, right, see, there you go. They get to form a relationship directly with a recruiter from the other side. And the recruiter has now something at stake because they've paid this candidate for access to their data. So like everything else in the world, when you pay for something directly, you treat it with a different level of respect than when you just get it for free. When you can just always swipe left and no one cares, there's nothing at stake. You have no value. Here, you're forced and incented to create a one-on-one relationship. And every good recruiter who's out there is always looking to make those connections because they're looking to build relationships for the future for their business. So that's where we're a unique model, in that we're giving the people who actually own the data the power and the money that's associated with the information that they own.
That sounds incredible, and I think everyone must be, I feel like, excited about it. So do you have this product available only in the US, or is a global product?
Right now, it's only in the United States because we just launched and we wanted to start small and scale up. Also, we're providing a lot of like rewards and incentives for users to get involved in each country that we expand to. And so there's going to be opportunities for people in the US to earn some just free value for being on the platform in the form of network testing rewards. So we're going to test out various aspects of our network to the people who are signed up today, and those who respond to those tests or will receive some value. I think we're going to do, the number is going to shift a little bit, but around $150,000 of rewards for the early users here on the platform here in the US. And then we're going to be doing another wave of rewards in a few months for another value to be determined. And then we're going to expand to, there's three different kind of directions for us right now. We're trying to figure out which one to choose, but we'll be expanding to additional markets, either Latin America, Asia, or Europe in the 2025 region, or it could be all three, right? But yeah, in 2025, we plan to expand the app to more markets and then offer those rewards, test the platform after we're sure it works, and continue to expand. We don't want to just go everywhere all at once and then potentially have issues. So it's going to be, expansion by market. We're looking at like how Facebook expanded. I was in university when Facebook started. And so what they did is they were in a small collective of universities testing it, making sure it worked, and then they announced, here's where we're coming next. And all those universities got excited about it. Just, hey, it's coming to our university soon. And then they went to those, and then they just kept expanding until they opened it up globally. But it took, they did that like similar approach to what we're describing here, except they didn't have rewards that have value and money tied to them. So I think we'll hopefully expand faster than they did too.
Sounds very interesting. So for company instead, how they can attract the right talent in less time by using MyStandard?
So simply put, like the app that the companies will use, they type in all of the information associated with the search they're trying to create. So you can get as granular in detail or be as broad as you want based on the need that you have. The beautiful thing here is that you always have control as a user over how many candidates you're going to want to see. So in the current structure with LinkedIn, as when you apply for a job, oftentimes you're sending a resume where 5,000 other resumes were sent. Nobody on the client side wants that, right? They don't want to spend their day going through resume after resume of unqualified candidates. Since you're setting up a search and it gets very specific, the more specific you get, the smaller the number of candidates are that match that search, which is great because as a user, you want to be able to find candidates that are absolutely perfect for a role, and nothing better than having a manageable number, say 10, 20, 30, 40. So that's the way the client sets up the structure. They determine how many candidates they get to see. They hit the button, right? That, as I said earlier, the candidate receives a notification on their phone, but the client doesn't pay for access to that data unless the candidate says yes. So there's no bias. They get to see nothing about them. So if a person is not interested, it's not as if they're outed that they weren't interested. The client never sees them. The ultimate goal of the client side or the recruiting side is if their manager internally needs a good person, their job is to get that person in front of that hiring manager. The hiring manager does not care where you found this person. They only care that this person is qualified. So if there's any tools out there that can simplify this process so that the candidate that they're going to put in front of their end user is a good one, is qualified, is ready for the job, and is excited about the opportunity, that's a win for everybody involved. So that's where the client really has the ability. They have the ability to control how many candidates, and they have the ability to determine exactly what they want to find from our database of users.
So let's talk about your journey together as co-founder. How important is to have a strong relationship, and how have you maintained yours?
No, that's a great question, especially when you're like, we say it's like relationships, right? It's like you're dating and marrying somebody. I probably talk to Josh more than anybody outside of my wife and my kids. And that includes weekends, weekdays, all sorts of stuff. So I think we get each other at this point. We know what our strengths and weaknesses are. I think you have to feel that out. There's a lot of things that I've realized that Josh is really good at when it comes to reading individuals and people, how to manage relationships and stuff like that. So I'll ask him for help there or listen to his guidance when he provides it. And then trust that the other person always has the best interests of the company at heart. There's nothing that we want more than the success of this company. We're both all in. And so any action or everything we do, we have to always remember that person is doing it with the perspective of they think this is going to be the most successful thing possible to make this company successful, or the best course of action to make this successful. So even if you don't agree with it, at least they're coming at it with the right tone. We always trust that. And I think that's some of the things that I've learned as going through this journey with Josh.
Yeah, I agree. I think the reality is that one thing we've over the course of time have come to, which is a good thing now, is transparency. I think that was what always makes a good founder relationship. To Adam's point, we're both have the same agenda, right? We're both in it for the same goal, but there are going to be lots of times, and there have been lots of times where we completely disagree with each other's take on things. But sharing that fact and not holding on to that and letting that bother you is the key. We go back and forth. It's like I've said, it's like any relationship. We're not going to agree on every single thing, but one thing we're good at is explaining the fact that we don't agree and trying to come to a resolution so that both sides push the ball forward, whatever the situation is, and we both feel like that we are heard and we're listened to. I think that's oftentimes the downfall of people is they refuse to admit when they're upset about something, and that becomes a major problem because that does not go away. So we've passed that bridge a while ago where I'm going to tell him exactly what I think. He's going to tell me what he thinks, and we're going to work it out.
I guess the key is to know how to manage conflict when that arises.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And we're good at that. We always, as we deal with things as they come, right? We never let things fester.
There's just too many things that are going on in a startup for you to sit on one topic for too long. You just go like, all right, move on to the next at some point. No matter what it is, it's just like at some point if I look at a laundry list of things that I can either work on today or I have to make decisions on today, there's no one thing that I think is more important than the rest. So we just have to like make decisions, move on. If we disagree, we talk about it. I might choose something that Josh disagrees with or vice versa, but I don't think either of us hold on to it too long, because at the end of the day, we still have that trust that the other person is at least making a decision with the best interests of the company at heart. There's never any selfishness here that makes me feel like Josh is doing something for him, not for the company. We're not there. So.
So you had probably your own specific knowledge about your sector, but apart that, can you share any resources that have been particularly helpful to you in building MyStandard?
That's good. Yeah. Okay. So for me, like I'm more on the blockchain Web3 side of this than Josh. And so like for me, Twitter has been a huge resource for learning about what's going on in the space, discovering new companies we could partner with, finding investors, finding people to help us, like partners in building out the solution. And so for my answer, I think on the Web3 side, because I'm not a developer, but I'm probably the second most technical person at the company since we just hired a CTO. And so in order to get there, I needed to spend a lot of time with developers and with the entrenched in the space, finding people who are just smarter and more connected than me and making friendships and relationships with them and building off their wisdom and knowledge. For my answer, I think that Twitter is a phenomenal resource if you want to learn about Web3. It's just that they call it crypto Twitter. It's just people gravitated toward there. It's, I think, the biggest and best resource to network and learn and understand and figure out what should I be doing in the space, what is trustworthy, what's not.
What about you, Josh?
Yeah, as much as I am bash LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn for what I do on the candidate and talent acquisition side is a really helpful resource from a social media perspective. It's really good to pay attention to all the things that are going on. LinkedIn's a really good value resource for watching people's feeds and listening to what they're posting. And I like to chime in and be as engaged as I possibly can. It's made a lot of really strong relationships. It's gotten me on a lot of different podcasts, which has opened lots of doors. So LinkedIn's been an incredibly good resource. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I comment on people's posts all the time and I post all the time. I think the numbers aren't as giant as they are on like Twitter. Like we have over 80,000 followers on Twitter, but the engagement level on LinkedIn is extremely high. So the value proposition for us there is those are going to be the people that we target as we grow to use the tool, both as clients and as candidates. So I try to stay as engaged there as possible because I know that ultimately all of those relationships that I'm forming there will end up bearing fruit.
Time is going really fast and we are reaching the end of this episode, but we have a few more questions. First of all, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs who are looking to start their own tech ventures?
That's a pretty good one. So I would say the first thing you should do is validate your idea. So find people who are connected to the industry you're targeting, whether it be companies or influencers or whatever, and just run it by them and see if what you're thinking about doing is going to make an impact. Because you might think it will, and then you're going to get some feedback and it'll allow you to kind of change and stuff. And those relationships you make early, if they like what you're doing, they'll become advisors for you later or investors for you later. It bears fruit in a couple ways to do that. I would say the first thing that you should do is just validate with, and they'll listen. Like anybody who's connected, if you tell them like, hey, you're a highly influential, connected person, I've been reading your posts. You're somebody that I think would provide a lot of value to my idea. Let me just run this by and let me know if it's like something you think is unique and would have impact on this industry. And they'll listen to you. I don't think too many people will turn you away. It makes them feel it strokes their ego a little bit that you're coming to them, and then it could pay. They might see something in it for them later on too. So that's my first. I would say do that first and do that a lot. Don't just do it a little bit. Don't just get one person's opinion. Get like a few before you really know that you're like onto something.
What about you, Josh?
I would say fail because you're going to fail during your process, but it's how you respond to that failure that makes the determination whether you're going to be successful or not. Anybody can win easily, right? Winning easily does not provide you any value. With our journey, as Adam said at the very beginning of this process, it was very easy to raise money. Everybody was throwing money at us. So we thought we were really special. Wow, we're the best. It wasn't until things started to not be so smooth that we built our character around what we're going to do when things don't go as planned. If you're going to really be a startup founder and you're going to build something, fail, but then fail quickly and get up from your failure. Don't let the first time things don't go your way end your journey, because if you do, then you're not really going to be a founder, because nothing ever goes as planned and nothing is ever smooth as you want it to be. It's all how you adapt to those changes that failure that occurs.
Yeah, really. Now we are at the end. So the last question that we asked to all of our guests, if you could give yourself a piece of advice, what would you say to your younger self?
To my younger self, you're not going to be 6'5", so stop playing basketball and pick up golf. That's probably what I'd tell myself. No, I think if I was to go back to my younger self, I would, yeah, I think going back to what Josh said is things, my life was pretty straightforward. I grew up in a loving family. We were good. We didn't really have any hardships, grew up in a nice suburb. You know what I mean? Everything was really good and set up for me. And so I think I would just remind myself that the people, like the reason your life is, I was never really educated on this. I had to learn it later in life. But like your grandparents and the people around you provided that safety net for you. You know what I mean? Like they worked hard and sacrificed really a lot to make it easy for you to have this like life that allows you to have these opportunities like starting a company and taking these risks. Feel like you're special a little bit early on because everything's working out your way, but you're really, it's like it's built on the groundwork of like community working hard and family working hard. And I think that those types of everybody's contributing at all times to make it possible for you to have success. Really have a lot more understanding and humility toward that. I think that those are lessons that I learned later in life that I think we pass on to our kids. My wife and I, we pass on to our kids those ideas that there was like lots of people who made this life possible for you today. It didn't just happen. And I think that those are some good lessons to teach children that I don't remember my parents talking to me about that kind of stuff, and I had to pick it up later.
That's good that you have that awareness. And what about Josh?
If I could tell my younger self anything, it would be more patient. I have a tendency to, and I'm learning this as now that I'm old, that things that are valuable take time. Things don't happen overnight. If you really want to be successful, you have to be willing to take longer than you anticipated, than you wanted to. And this company is a perfect example of that. We thought we were going to be ready and up and running in less than a year, and it just didn't happen that way. And as a younger person, may have thrown in the towel sooner and just moved on. But that's not how you get ahead in life. The way you get ahead in life is really staying focused and not being in a rush to get to the end. The journey is the destination. So take your time, be patient, and things may work out. So you just have to take your time with things.
It's like you can't control success, but you can enjoy the process and feel like the process is the success. And
because
you never feel like a failure.
Like I went to just to wrap this up, I know we got to go, but to wrap it up, like I went to an event last night with a bunch of founders in the city in Manhattan, and there's so many young aspiring founders, right? And when we got to talking about what I do and versus what they do, I realized how far ahead we are than most of them are. And the reason is because we've just been doing it longer, right? Because they're all just figuring it all out. And to get to the point where we're at, it took so much work and so much time that we should appreciate that. And then also know that there's a really serious foundation here. And the only way you build a foundation is by being patient.
Thank you, Adam and Josh, so much for sharing your story and inspiration with us today. And a last message for our listeners, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, leave a review, and tune in next week for a new inspirational episode of The Career Changers. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.